Sam says we're going live right now. How's everybody doing? Ready for our monthly Thursday Night Live? I am. And I've actually got the air conditioner on in the shop today. It was just a little bit warm and stuffy in here earlier. So it's nice to run the air when I can. Let me get my computer opened up, and I want to do something right away, a little bit of an announcement. You're probably aware that WWGOA did a sweepstakes. It ended a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and we have winners. So here's the deal. 4 lucky people here. Jerry Morosky of Dallas, Texas, won the Laguna 1216 lathe. Craig Young from Owasso, Oklahoma, won the Craig Adaptive Cutting System. Jonathan Hinckley from Newtown, Connecticut, was the winner of the Woodpacker's Precision Square package. And Jason Reardon won the Armor Tool package. So congratulations to you guys. I guess when whomever notified the winners. Jerry said that he's fixing to use the Laguna lathe to turn pens as groomsmen gifts for his kiddo's wedding. So that's pretty neat. That's what a great groomsman gift, and it's neat to see the lathe go to a good home like that. Let me jump on here and see what we have for questiones. And I am, for those of you that are watching on the YouTube, I am going to try to toggle back and forth between YouTube and the GOA page to grab your questions on both of those sites as much as I can. All right, we have a question about making a jewelry box with the lid glued to the top of the box frame. Best method for then splitting the two apart with the lid then having part of the box material. I use my table saw, but usually have to plane them a lot to get the two faces to marry up. So I think what we're talking about is making a box. Hold please. Making a box. And then in this case, what I did was the whole box is done, sides, top, bottom. Started some splining on here, but that's as far as I got, is that corner. And then what I do with this is once we get where everything is done and we're ready to make this into a box, then I go to the table saw and cut the top off. So I think that's what the question is about. One of the things that's cool about this is when we put it back together as a box, we have grain alignment across these faces, because this is one wide piece, this is one wide piece. So we're still going to have grain alignment across there. So let me adjust us here for the table saw. We did, with our move from last Thursday to this Thursday, that conflicted with Ginny running the camera. So I'm flying solo tonight. But we'll be okay. We'll get this to work. I'm going to do a couple changes here. This is not the right blade for what we want to do. So I'm going to pull this blade out. I just unplugified the saw. And I'm taking the guard off because we can't have that on either. While I'm doing this, I'll do a little promotion. Doing a big open house here at my shop this Saturday the 22nd. So if you're somewhere nearby Hammond, Wisconsin, which is about 30 miles east of St. Paul, Minnesota, you're going to have the open house from 1 to 7, 1 p.m. to 7. And it's not going to be just myself. It's Meet the Makers is what it's called. So me, Matt Cremona, Paul Mayer, Matt Coppersmith, Donovan Cummings, Anna Sprague. There are going to be about, I don't know, 10 or 15 different local artisans, makers, content creators that are all going to be here for the event Saturday. So that will be a lot of fun. We've got door prizes. I'm going to run the sawmill. I'm going to demo the sawmill every once in a while. So there's going to be a lot going on if you're nearby and can stop in. This is a great application for a riving knife. Took the splitter off because we can't have the whole basket on for this cut, but we can have a riving knife. And then the way I do this is I set the height of the blade so that it's just barely above the thickness of my stock. Let me give you a zoom on that. Currently too high. Right about there. And then the fence can come in to our setting. Whatever it is we want the height of the lid to be, that's where we would set the fence at this point. Now you can't see it, but I am plugging my saw back in, give the computer a chance to catch up. Computer, because it's a saw stop. And then, here's how this is going to go. Computer says we're good. Dust collection. Hanging up on the riving knife, so I stop the saw, unplug. I think the top of the riving knife is just a little bit high. One of the interesting things about live woodworking. Plug the saw back in. Let the computer catch up. That's better. Now, remember when I said continuous grain? So this is neat. When we get hinges on this, that grain flows, and of course it does it on all four sides, because they all started as one piece. Then what I would do with this is this edge needs just a tiny bit of sanding, and a good way to make sure that stays flat is to stick sandpaper to a surface like this and then sand. If you hand sand this, or take a random orbit to it, there's too much chance of rounding that. So I prefer to do self-adhesive sandpaper, sand, top and bottom, and take off just enough to get the saw marks out, and then you'll be back in business. The big Las Vegas show is coming up, AWFS. Any of you going to that? A lot of commercial equipment there. It's a really cool thing to get to. All right. Stan says, I'm going to be gluing up a 48 by 52 torsion box bench top to hold a CNC. Flatness is important. I set up a frame of jointed 2x4s to build it on that will later become the top frame supporting the bench top. I need to make clamping cauls long enough to bridge the 48-inch direction. I'm thinking of using more of the 2x4 framing stock destined for the legs. Any suggestions on making such large cauls? I've never done it. I'm assuming I'm thinking a second. Yeah, I don't know. If you've got a jointer, I mean, I'd say a jointer is kind of a must-have for what you're looking to do there, so that you can get the edge straight, so that when you use it as a caul, you can rely on it holding everything straight and flat for your top. So I guess that's my best advice. I've never made a caul that big, but I think it really feels to me like that's going to rely on a jointed edge. Chuck asks, recommendations for a workbench, pieces of wood, where to buy plans, interested in a bench with dogs and an end vise. Not sure I have the skills to build one. Recommended wood, my bench has got a Baltic birch top. You want something hard so it's durable. So this is actually 2 4x8 sheets of Baltic birch, 2 1-inch 4x8 sheets of Baltic birch plywood that make up the top of this table. So man-made material, that'd be a good choice. I know a lot of people use MDF for workbench tops. Maple, hard maple, or beech would be the woods of tradition. You know, the woods that have gone into workbenches since forever. Hard maple and beech. So those are all good wood choices. And then for plans, Google is your friend. I would just start looking. I literally would put into Google workbench plans and see what's out there. Find something you like. Find something that fits your skill set. A lot of people, a lot of content creators make workbenches. Some are as simple as 2x4s from a home center. Some are more complex with mortise and tenon joinery. So it's just a matter of poking around and finding the design you like, and then a build method that fits your skill set and tools. Somebody's asking, when are you going to make a full-size router table for a router with a lift? Well, I don't know. It's not on the agenda at this point. And I'll tell you what, if I do that, and I'm looking at my router table, in all likelihood, I will make a cabinet and then put a commercially made top on it. And I think that manufacturers do a great job of making tops and lifts that fit in the tops. So I don't know. I'll stew on it. Does anyone know of a company? 8 a.m. in the Philippines. So Gary, I was just reading Navy letters from my dad to his parents. My dad would be 90-something now if he were still alive. So in October of 1945, he landed in Samoa. And I'm not far enough in the letters yet. I don't know what his duty station ended up being, but it's interesting. The letters covering his boat trip over to Samoa. It's pretty neat stuff, neat read. Bob says, anyone know of a company or individual that could help me set of a new Powermatic 8-inch HH jointer? Well, how about Powermatic, maybe, right? I mean, Powermatic's still in business. So I'm not completely clear on what you're looking for, but Powermatic is, I would go to Powermatic. And Gary says, a sawyer in eastern Wisconsin had a load of rough cut black oak for sale recently. I wasn't able to buy it, but haven't had much luck finding information about it other than it is in the red oak family. Is it suitable for cabinet or furniture building? I don't know what it is, black oak. I've never heard of it. Yeah, I don't know what you got there. Cleston is in Houston, where I will be in just a couple of weeks. Evans, Georgia. Renton, Washington. Prescott, Arizona. And Rodney is in Western Australia. I recently sent in to ask the expert woodworking question, but have not had a reply. Are you still doing this? We have myself and myself and Paul answer all the questions. So if it was emailed in, it crosses both of our desks, and then we split up who answers it depending on what the question is. If you want to post it here, I'll take a run at it, but we'll go from there. On YouTube, Matthew says, what are the pegs on my working table used for? By pegs, do you mean you got dogs and dog holes? Like a dog day afternoon? So pegs, I don't know if I actually have any conventional bench dogs. But let's look at, so on my bench, you're looking at the top of my monitor. On my bench here, it's got holes in it, which could receive pegs. This is not a peg, obviously. It's another form of device I can use with the holes. So when I put that in, coupled with the vise, there's a bench dog in the vise. I can sandwich material between those two, and even if this were just a peg, it would do the same thing. And then on this one, I also use those for hold downs. I think that's not gonna go all the way in because the vise is right there. Yeah, it bumps into the vise, but they fit into the same 3/4 inch holes. So yeah, the pegs typically marry into work you would do with a vise and act as a stop on your bench. All right. Homer, Alaska. Alec. I just turned my first green bowl out of a birch burl, and I had lots of trouble with it. I don't get any spaghetti-like shavings, just sawdust. The bowl was roughed on the lathe because it was too tall for my bandsaw. Screw center ended up stripping out, and overall it was harder to turn, not easier. I was able to save it and make something cool with it, but the process was very hard. I probably sharpened my round nose scraper 10 times during the turning and coming right off and it ended. There, work sharp, 80 and then 400. So you can't go 80 grit to 400 if that's the jump. You need to use grits in between. That being said, I don't think you need to go as fine as 400. When I grind on my low RPM grinder, my fine wheel is 120, and that's where I do all my bowl gouges and scrapers. So you don't need to go as fine as 400. I don't know, if the wood was dripping wet green, and I wonder on your scraper if you've got if the angle of your scraper is wrong. So when you're looking at the flat top of a bowl scraper, the nose, the cutting tip should be ground, it's maybe only 5 degrees or so off a plumb. I almost wonder if that's too vertical on your scraper. You don't have quite enough cutting angle on there, quite enough relief angle. So I would look at that. But other than that, I can't really figure out the screw center stripping out. That can happen. That's happened to me, especially in greenwood because it's softer, more so than drywood. So that's not a huge red flag. But if you were making nothing but dust and the wood was dripping wet green, then the only other thing I can point to really is your chisel wasn't ground right or wasn't as sharp as it should be. And then 2, keep in mind, round nose, with any kind of a scraper, round nose scraper, the top of the chisel should be even with the center of the bowl to get it in the right attack point. So make sure the top of your tool rest is in the right spot for that relationship. We've got Jim in Gilbert, Arizona. Stephen in Port Angeles, Washington. And then somebody's asking about plans for the workbench. And I get asked this all the time. And I love my bench. And I'll tell you the story. I did a video where I built a kitchen table that was 36 by 72. And at that time, my workbench, my main bench here, was 32 by 74 or something like that. Pretty small, like traditional size top workbench. So to do that big kitchen table, I did a lot of that work on a pair of sawhorses with a 4x8 sheet on them. And once I did that, and I had that aircraft carrier real estate available, I was thinking to myself, I really need a bigger bench. So when I started this project, I thought, this bench is so big, it's 34 by 4 by 8, that not many people are going to want a bench this big because of space limitations. I've got a really big shop, but not everybody does. So I built this completely on the fly. I had a picture in my head. I designed as I went. I built as I went. I designed as I built. So as a result, most of what I do, I start with SketchUp plans, but this one, I winged it start to finish. So my answer, plans to the workbench, yes, I'm very slowly working on them. So now I'm backtracking. I'm reverse engineering, doing the SketchUp drawing based on where I ended up. And that'll be available on my website at some point. But I've been saying that for a few months now already. But enough people ask that I need to get motivated and finish it. So the short answer to your question is yes. The longer answer is don't hold me to a specific time frame, please. Is there a non-premium video for sharpening chisels and planer blades? I don't know off the top of my head. So on WWGOA, if you go to that search window in the upper right-hand corner, or on your phone, it's just a banner in the kind of the middle of your phone, and put in the topic you're looking for, whatever pops. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how different content has been classified over time. Somebody's watching us at gate B5 in the Atlanta airport. I think I've been there. I think I've been at that gate. I know I've been in the Atlanta airport. And then somebody too has jumped in on YouTube and is providing some information about black oak. So for whomever asked that, if you go to WWGOA Live on YouTube, there's some information there, or Google it. Not Google Live, Google black oak. How interchangeable are commercial router tables versus routers? Can a porter cable router fit into any commercial table or top? Great question. Yeah, so you really don't need to marry into, like, I've got a DeWalt or a porter cable router, so therefore I need that same brand of table. What happens is that there's an insert. If you don't have a router lift, there'll be an insert in the table, and I'm just trying to think if I have one laying here, but I don't think I do. Both my tables have lifts in them. And those inserts maybe they don't have any holes in them. And the instructions from the manufacturer will be drill holes to work with your router. Or they've got a set of, kind of a component that looks like a cheese grater, because it's got a gazillion holes in it. And what they've gone through and said, what they've done is gone through and said, use these 3 holes for a Porter Cable 690. Use these holes for a DeWalt. Use these holes for a Bosch. So with that, so the answer to the question is it's hugely interchangeable, because manufacturers are really good about recognizing you could own a Triton or a Milwaukee or a whatever, and they want you to be able to hang that in their table. So pretty much infinitely adjustable. Bruce is in Fort Worth, Texas. I was just in San Antonio, Texas, not too long ago with the kiddo. What a beautiful city that was. And then I'm kind of gearing up for the next question here. Best way to cut 1/4 inch plexiglass, table saw. Let's do this. I'm going to I'm going to go back to the blade I had in, I think. Let me look at it and we'll go from there. So for plexi, that's a 40 tooth blade that's in there now. That's too aggressive a tooth pattern. This is a Diablo 60 tooth blade, and that's going to work smurferifically for what we're looking to do here. So let's, I'm going to go back and undo what I had done previously. Saws unplugged, blade change. If I get through 2 blade changes tonight without dropping the arbor nut or washer down into the saw, that will be amazing. And for what we're going to do, the conventional guard will be a more better choice. And then I think I have a piece of plexiglass right here in my storeroom. So I'm going to plug the saw back in, and the computer can play catch up while I'm going to get plexiglass. This is 1/8 inch, but the premise is the same. Fine tooth blade. I actually like having the guard on for this because it helps keep the plexiglass down on the table a little bit. I mean, I like having the guard no matter what, but it helps keep that on the tabletop. Set your fence. And then from here, part of the key is I do set the blade a little bit higher for plexi than I normally would. I want to make sure it's got down pressure on it. So my normal rule of bottom of the gullet, even with top of the material, I go just a little bit higher for plexi. And Bob's your uncle. So blade selection is really the key there. Any chance you do a short class on CNC beginning to end? From design of a simple part on a computer to the part being complete on the CNC. Yeah, we've done it. There is a CNC class already in place on WWGOA. So if you do shop, up on the top of the banner, one of the options is shop. Click on that, and then I think classes is an option in there. And there's a CNC class on there where using VCarve Pro, we've got screen captures of VCarve being used, and then from there go to setting that up on the CNC and making cuts. And then we just did another one that hasn't posted yet, a more advanced one as well. Where I know I cut aluminum in the more advanced one. I can't remember everything I did. It's been a few months since we shot it. But one is up already. The second one will be up in a few months. Brent says, enjoy your program. Ideas on the website give me lots of inspiration. In Yorkton, Saskatchewan. That's cool. And then somebody asks again about the workbench, so same deal. It'll be on the Von Driscoll Woodwork site. as a PDF once I get it drawn. Another buddy, somebody else in Prescott. Ken says, bought the Isotunes Pro, find it difficult to put in my ears despite trying all 3 of the included plugs. Find them less effective than WorkTunes headphones I had been using. Any tips? Well, I would call Isotunes. They've seen more ears than I have. For me, I don't know, for what, maybe 5 years now, I've been using Isotunes, and I'm using the medium plugs, the medium inserts, roll them, put them in my ears, and they stay stuck hours and 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 hours. But I would, Isotunes is very responsive to customers. So I'd shoot them an email or give them a call and see if they've got any other suggestions. Rodney says, when I join 2 boards of different thicknesses with a biscuit joiner, do I reference from the thickest or the thinnest part for the joint to be secure? Butt joint 90 degree. I'm not actually sure what you mean. So if you're doing this, then 2 boards of different thicknesses. So if you're doing, let me grab material. This board is about 1/2 inch, this board is about 3/4. If you're looking to do this, then I would set the fence on the biscuit joiner to center the biscuit on the thin stuff. And then you have to leave the fence in that same position, so cut the slots. And then you leave the fence in that same position when you cut the slots in this one. And that's going to get these 2 edges to line up. I think that's what you mean. Don's got some information about black oak. Very common upland tree. How do you install Euro hinges on inset doors? Same way I would do them on any door. I actually have an inset door with Euro hinges on. Hold please. Coming right back. I really am. Can you still hear me? I'm a long way away. So with Euro hinges, for the most part, with getting them on the door, it doesn't matter if it's inset or overlay. The cup distance, which is the distance from the edge of the hole to the edge of the door, is usually 3 millimeters. There can be some variation there, but drill your 35 millimeter holes if you're using conventional size Euro hinges. What I always do is whatever the door size ends up being, then if you're not completely confident in getting the hinges on right, I cut a piece of scrap. I cut a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to that exact size. And then at my drill press, I'll go ahead and drill with a 3 millimeter cup distance or 4 millimeter, wherever you want to start. Drill it, put the hinges on, see if that works for your cabinet. And then if not, it's only a piece of plywood, so you can adjust the cup distance. But the cup distance is critical in order to let you get the right amount of left to right adjustment. Like I said, it's typically 3 millimeters, but it's worth doing a test bore on plywood before you do your real door. Your website, do you mean here? Yep, WWGOA.com, all sorts of info there. Search window in the right corner. I noticed you have a blower motor next to your table saw. Do you have more than one dust collector system? Yeah, it's not a blower motor. I've got a dust collector. So in this building, I haven't plumbed it for dust collection. I've got one on the table saw, and that's all it does is the table saw. Then I've got one over there I can show you. So here's my dust collection deal. No. I've got that one. See that right there? That's a dust collector. Dedicated to just the table saw. Then I've got that one, which ignore my marginal plumbing job, but that goes in that direction. So that connects to the bandsaw, and then in that end of the shop, there are 4 CNC machines that it connects to. And then one CNC machine back there, I use a shop vac and the Rockler separator that picks up off of that CNC machine. How's that for pointer skills? No. Am I making you seasick? And then, where am I? Then I have that dust collector, and that one is plumbed into jointer, planer, Supermax sander, 18-inch bandsaw. And my brand new dust collector, or air compressor, I just bought at a garage sale last week. Are you going to be teaching any class at the Rockler store in Buffalo, New York? Or do you have suggestions on classes in that southern New York or northern Pennsylvania? Yeah, I don't know anybody offering classes out there. Rockler, I've been in a lot of Rockler stores. I'll be at the Rockler store in Houston in July. Go to the store, tell them you want me to come teach there. They'll talk to corporate and we'll try to get it figured out. So it all just kind of comes together how it comes together. I was at Rockler in Chicago just last weekend. Harvey says, I made a picture frame with a round circle cut out in it. Had a very hard time trying to cut a circle out of plexiglass. How would you do it? I would do it on a bandsaw with probably a 6-tooth per inch blade would be a good choice for that. How do you transfer patterns to wood for wood burning? I am not a wood burner kind of a guy. So I don't know what a common thing for that is. Interestingly, if you've never tried this, it works. If you photocopy a pattern and then you lay it on a piece of wood and you iron it, so layer it image down and then you iron it, and I got to think a second. I think it has to be a laser printer, laser copier printer, right? And then you iron it, it'll transfer to the material. Now, if you're wood burning that and then you have to sand off the transfer lines, how does that affect your wood burning? I don't know. But I've used that method to transfer patterns. I have a small shed to work in, so I don't have room for a dedicated layout table. I have made a small sheet of plywood I attach to my table saw for a workspace. Does that sound okay? Oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, table saw is nice and flat. Adding a little build out to that so you have more working room, that seems like a great idea. Alex says, I forgot to say I tried a shearing cut during roughing and there wasn't a big difference, but I'm not sure because it wasn't round yet. Yeah, so when a bowl is spinning, it's out of round and you don't have continuous contact with it, scraper or gouge. It's hard to get the spaghetti shavings. But as you get it closer and closer and closer to being round, then you should start to see those spaghetti shavings come off. I'd still default to, I would really look at the tool and make sure it's beveled like it should be and as sharp as it should be. Thanks for the answer about router tables and routers. Does the same interchangeability apply to lifts? So part of the line in the sand with router lifts will be not what brand of router you're buying, but what size of router you're buying. So I want to say the big 3-horse, like the Porter Cable 7518 router, 3-horse, or the big Milwaukee router, I think that those motor diameters are about 3.5 inches. They're pretty big. Then in like the 2 1/4 horse, like the Porter Cable 890, 2 1/4 horse, DeWalt makes one that size, Bosch makes one that size. The motor is physically smaller. So what some manufacturers do is they have a lift for this size router motor. And it's not brand specific, it's this lift will work with motors that are from this big to this big. And then they have a different lift for a different size. Other manufacturers may have defaulted to the big one, like the 3.5 or whatever it is. And then they perhaps provide shims that you can use to size it down for the smaller motors. So again, it's not about brand. In that case, it's more about, it is about how big a router you're choosing to buy. So it's, you want to explore that before you nail down your lift or your router. Gary says, when face joining a longer board, where should I be putting downward force on the board, before or after the cutter head, once the board is started? So what I do is, I got to think a second because I just kind of do it inherently at this point. My down pressure stays in front of and behind the cutting head all the time, even on a long board, because that's the critical spot. And if I just don't have anything long here I can face joint. You want to make sure that you're maintaining contact between the face of the board and the in-feed and out-feed table of your joiner. So keeping your down pressure close to the cutter head, I think, is where you're going to want to be. Let me get a little Gatorade in me, please. Or a lot of Gatorade. I'll do some more questions in a momentito, but as always, thanks to Titebond for underwriting this, which keeps these live events free for you folks. So kudos to Titebond for doing that. I notice you don't torque the arbor nut on your table saw very much. Is there a recommended amount of pressure? Yeah, this is a hard one because it really doesn't take, if your knuckles are turning white when you tighten the arbor wrench on your table saw, you're making it too tight, I think. And it's just that much harder to get off later. So I struggle with this, and it's the same problem I have when I'm teaching classes, is how to define what, I know this much pressure works. You know, it's a little bit, it's like changing spark plugs on a car. I've done it 8 million times, and when I'm holding the ratchet and going gruk, 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 done, I know the spark plug is right. When I'm teaching my kids to change spark plugs on a car, getting that definition for them is hard to do. Same thing here. So I'm getting to that point of contact, then another little oomph, and then that's it. So that another little oomph is my, I guess, definition of how much pressure. Steven says, your opinion of table saw blade stabilizers. I don't have them with any of my blades, and I use thin kerf blades, so I don't know. I don't want to say you don't need them, because maybe in some cases you do. In my case, I've never put a stabilizer on a table saw blade. Maybe I'm missing something, and for somebody who uses them all the time, they'd say you're missing getting incredible cut quality out of a thin kerf blade because you're not using a stabilizer. But I guess the real answer is I've never used them. I don't know much about them. I don't know what they would bring to the table saw for me. So I can't really render an opinion because I've never used them. There's a comment that somebody had a woodworking friend who cut glass, but that's in asterisks, so I don't know if it was really glass, on his table saw. Did it just to see if he could. Not recommended. I don't see how you could pull that off and not have glass shards all over the place. Freud makes a blade specifically for acrylic, negative hook. Yep, and that's a great point. Negative hook on plexiglass cutting blades is a great characteristic. Have you used African blackwood? I tried it. It destroys sandpaper, bleeds into the curly maple. No, I haven't tried it. And there's a couple woods like that. Another one is Padauk. It's pretty common to marry Padauk next to maple because it's a really pretty contrast. Padauk is almost pumpkin orange. However, excuse me, it's not uncommon that then when you put any finish on it, the Padauk starts to bleed into the maple. I've not done it. I'm familiar with the combos like you're talking about here, but I haven't done it myself, so I don't have a solution for you to prevent that bleed from happening where it starts to creep into the lighter colored wood. Sid says he's trying to mill 8-foot long oak boards on a joiner with mixed results. Any hints for jointing long boards on small equipment? Well, it's just tough. I mean, I hate to say you can't. However, as a general rule, as a general guide, you can joint stuff about twice as long as the overall length of your jointer. So if the bed is, if it's like a benchtop joiner and the bed is 2 or 3 feet, you're going to be able to edge joint stuff that's 4 or 6 feet, and that's going to be about it. If you're determined to make this go, I would work really hard to set up in-feed and out-feed support in addition to the tables. So that could be roller stands, it could be, I don't know, something, but you need something, you need more support that's going to help prevent the board from sagging off, either while you're on the in-feed side and you're starting to feed it and there's still a mile of wood behind you, or you're getting through the cut and a bunch of board is sticking out there and starting to sag off because you're falling off the outfeed table. So that, my first thing would be add additional support in-feed and outfeed for the board. David says, proper way to evenly stain maple. You can do a couple different things. One is wood conditioner. Maple and birch and pine can get real blotchy under stain. So one workaround for that is to use commercially made wood conditioners, and they work well. Follow their instructions about compatibility with stains and top coats and everything else. The other thing you can do, interestingly, is you can seal the whole board with shellac. And this, the first time I did this, it was like mind blown because I didn't think this could possibly work. But de-wax shellac, and you can seal the board with that, very lightly scuff sand the shellac, and then stain it. And it'll still, even though you've got shellac on it, it'll still take stain, but that will also help even the color out so that you don't get blotchiness. Shellac is also a great way to deal with end grain. End grain has a propensity when you're staining stuff to stain much darker than face grain. So shellac on the end grain can help resolve that too. So wood conditioner or shellac, experiment on scrap so you know you can get the look you want before you do your real project. I like your cordless tool cabinet, trying to gauge dimension by height. Let's see how long we've been here. Okay, it is 64 inches tall, 24 inches wide, 16 inches deep, and just the top part for the cordless stuff is 16 inches tall. Douglas says, does polyurethane get old and not dry like shellac, or is there another cause? Putting 1.5-year old polyurethane over red mahogany stain, waited 2 days for stain to dry, and then what, the polyurethane's not drying? I'm not much of a polyurethane user. Trying to think if I run into this. I mean, honestly, my best advice would be call the manufacturer or email their customer service and ask them this same question. If it's, I mean, I don't think you're telling me how long the polyurethane has had to dry, right? But if it feels like it's still tacky when it shouldn't be, I'd ask this question of the polyurethane manufacturer. I guess for the most part in this joint, I'm consuming stuff at a fast enough rate that I don't really have a shelf life issue. And polyurethane just isn't something I use pretty much ever. So I just don't have a lot of experience with it. Speaking of dust collection, do you have the fine particle collectors also? I was told after having bought mine, a dust collector without this was useless because it allows fine particles through its bag. That's what, well, so these, one of my dust collectors has a pleated filter on it. The other two have cloth filters, and they're actually aftermarket. They're actually very cool and probably worth a look. There's a company called American Fabric Filter. So on that unit, that Ghostbusters, that's not the original filter that was on there. I called American Fabric Filter, said this is the diameter here, and they made that filter for me. I don't remember how fine it is, but and the dust collector on the other side of the shop, I've got the same filter system, and that's on my surface sander, that's on my Supermax, and it works great. So there's a micron number you can get from the manufacturers to tell you how fine their filters are going. I want to build a tabletop with a solid wood border with mitered joints. How would I go about gluing the piece together? So don't do a solid wood top and then capture it with a mitered frame. You need to do a man-made material top and capture it with a mitered frame. I've seen this go wrong a gazillion times. That solid wood top is going to expand and contract, and if you miter a frame and now you've got a cross-grain piece of banding mitered to the long-grain piece of banding, when the top expands and contracts, it's going to blow the thing apart. So use some kind of man-made material to make the field, and then when you go to band it, you just measure, cut miters, and work your way around the tabletop. Ron says, what's the max cut on a planer so as not to get snipe? Well, I don't think it's really about the maximum cut. I mean, maximum cut is more like, what'll the planer handle? I've got a 5-horse unit in here. I can take almost a 1/4 inch off per pass. Benchtop planers, you're going to take a 32nd, maybe a 16th off inch per pass. The snipe is a function not of how much material you're taking off, but how the machine is set up. On benchtop planers, they typically have locks on the cutter head to help overcome sniping. On big stationary planers, if you read the owner's manual, there are typically instructions for setting up the down pressure on the feed rollers, and that helps mitigate snipe. How to keep a drill press chuck from falling off. Well, that's frustrating, huh? So here's a cool trick. If you've got a Morse taper there and it just keeps falling off the Morse taper, clean it. That's the first thing. And make sure there's no like cosmoline left from the manufacturer in there. And then once it's clean, let it dry. So like clean it with denatured alcohol or a solvent like that, not mineral spirits, because mineral spirits is just a little bit greasy. denatured alcohol, naphtha, and then once it's clean and dry, let's see, I got to think of where I have stuff. Before you put it back together, rub a little chalk on it and then sock it in there. I'm not completely sure what the, I don't know, chemistry is of the chalk, but that can really, really help the two stay bound together. So clean it first with naphtha, denatured alcohol, something like that, and then once it's dry, put a little chalk on there and try that. Sid says, is your shop always so tidy? No. Ask Ginny, who works for me. She does a great job of picking up after me. When I'm frenetically busy, which I usually am, I'm very bad about just setting stuff down wherever. And then, of course, I can't find it, and there's stuff every place. Because of the open house we have this Saturday here, it's a little unnaturally clean right now because we've been meticulously getting stuff put away and organized. So then somebody else is asking about planer snipe. Is there a way to help a planer not make marks at the beginning and end of the board? So yeah, the marks are snipe. If it's a stationary planer, in the owner's manual, it should tell you how to adjust in-feed and out-feed roller pressure to help reduce that. On benchtop planers, if it's got a cutter head lock, use the cutter head lock. If it doesn't have a cutter head lock, then there's really no way to stop the planer from sniping. What you can do is feed multiple boards. So if you're planing more than one board, if one goes through and you chase it right away with another one, that'll stop it from sniping. And then chase it with another one, chase it with another one. And that'll eliminate the snipe thing. If there was one plane to buy, what would it be? Looking for the most versatile purchase. I think a Cessna, because they make really good planes, as far as I know. No, I am the least good person in your world to ask hand tool questions. My standard joke for hand tool related stuff is my hand tools are all in a cabinet behind a glass door, and over the door it says, in case of emergency, break glass. Because I'm just not, I taught hand tool joinery for Peace Corps in Africa for almost 3 years. But since I've been back, it's just not a thing I know much about. So there are woodworkers out there who will know much better than I what to do, what kind of hand plane to get you. I'm trying to get two boards that are 23 by 13 by 1/8. 23 by 13 by 1/8. Wanted to join 3/4 inch boards, but can't find a bandsaw with big enough resaw height. Can I resaw smaller boards and join these? Yeah, yeah. So if I was shooting for that, 23 by 13 by 1/8. I mean, if you can find the bandsaw, like my bandsaw's got a 13-inch capacity, so it'd be conceivable. However, I guess my approach would be, you could do a glue up of like 3/16 or 1/4 inch boards, and then I'm assuming the 13 is your width. If you can find somebody with a surface sander to then sand those down to the final 1/8 thickness, I think that would be your best approach. Jim says, you do a great job in these live programs. Thank you. I enjoy it. I'm looking at the clock now. I can't believe it's nearly 8 o'clock already. The time goes so fast. And it helps when people are asking a lot of questions, then things really flow. Steven says, any suggestions for drilling a Forstner bit hole 45 degrees without getting wandering? Yeah, it's, here's what you could, let me think a second. I guess what I would do, let me see if I can, I mean a brad point bit, if the hole doesn't have to be huge, if it's got to be Forstner bit huge, then you're kind of stuck. But if it's a smaller hole, I would do it with a brad point instead of a Forstner. I'm thinking. I'm coming right back. I didn't abandon you. What I'm stewing on here is, here's I guess what I would do. This is a 4x4. It's a piece of rosewood of all things. Drill your hole through this. Then, let me get a maca so it's easier for you to see. So inside here, drill your hole. And you might need a thicker block. Then go to a bandsaw and cut this at 45. Probably need a thicker block. And then use this resulting chunk as a drill guide. Clamp that to your workpiece. And then when you follow that, you should be able to punch a hole into your workpiece at 45. And because the Forstner bit is captured inside this hole, it shouldn't have the opportunity to wander. I would experiment with this. Yeah, I think this block is going to have to start thicker so you have more platform here for the 45. But I think that would work. I think it'd give you a running chance. But I would experiment with it and for sure test run that drill guide clamp to scrap before you do it on your project piece. Any familiarity with micro kerf blades? No, sir. I have no idea what that is. David says, we'll do just a couple more here and then we got to split. Is there a way to fix a 45-degree joint that isn't perfectly flush, like on a picture frame? Or, so if the 45 is kind of like this and you sand, I don't have anything mitered here. If it's kind of like this and then you sand the top piece, you can kind of cheat that and feather it down to a point where it's close to being flush. And then this will be our last one. Can you post where you will be doing a class and when? Yes, so if you want to track my class information, it's actually on my webpage, vondriskawoodworks.com. And there's one of the menus items on there is classes, and I always have my schedule posted there. And that way, whether I'm teaching here in my shop or on the road, everything I'm doing is on there. So just if you're in the Houston area, I will be there in July 12th, 13th, 14th. I'll be at the Rockler store in Spring, Texas on Friday the 12th, Rockler store in Houston, Texas on Sunday the 14th, and then I'm teaching cabinet making and furniture making stuff for the Houston Woodworking Club on Saturday the 13th, but that is open to the public. So you can contact them, don't contact me about that. I'm just showing up. If you Google Houston Woodworking Club, Houston Woodworking Guild, it's one of those two, you'll find them and you can contact them about getting in on those meetings or classes. All right, I'm going to take one last, I'm holding you over here, Sam, I'm sorry. Yep, nothing new on YouTube. I think we're covered there. All right, this is good. We're out of time and kind of out of questions. So thanks so much for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you. This is, yeah, I'm not sure about July. We'll get that figured out because I think just watch your posts watch your emails from WWGOA. Because now that I think about it, I think the normal second Thursday of the month, I will be in Houston, I think, or I'm going to be at the Las Vegas show, one of those two. So anyway, watch your schedule and we'll get July figured out. That's it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.